joining us today, and really a special thank you and welcome to all of those on the call who have philanthropically supported our cardiovascular center. So we're thrilled you're all joining us. I'm going to ask that everyone goes on mute except for when you're speaking. And so everyone would be on mute at this time except for me. Thank you. It helps with that background noise. Again, there's that chat function, so please feel free to write any questions that you have. And I do want to let you know that this presentation is being recorded. We did have some folks who were unable to join us live, so we are recording the presentation so that we can send it out to people as well. And at the end, we'll have lots of time for question and answer. So if you have any questions, be sure to keep those ready at any time really, but for sure at the end we'll have time. So for those of you who I haven't had the opportunity to meet, my name is Ann Rasmussen. I am the Chief Development Officer here for the Northwest, which basically is a fancy title to be able to say that I get to spend my time working with community members, finding out their passions, and then connecting them with programs and services at our hospital where they may want to be philanthropically involved. Joanna, I'm hearing a little echo. Is it coming across okay for you? Okay. I have a couple of hopes for today. And really my hope today is that you leave having a deeper understanding of our cardiovascular services here in Bellingham and Whatcom County, and that you get to meet one of our physicians, Dr. Tandon, as well as learn about our other amazing cardiologists here in Bellingham, and then what you might experience when you walk through one of our doors, whether that be in Bellingham or even in Skagit County or up in Ketchikan, Alaska. So we have two amazing speakers with us today, and so I am going to stop talking. And the first person, if we go to the next slide, that I want to introduce to you is my colleague, Jerry Marshke. Jerry and I have been working together. Gosh, it's been only for Jerry and I about 9 years, but he entered the medical field many years ago, but I won't tell them the date, Jerry. And he started as a registered radiology technologists. And since then, Jerry has moved up into numerous different positions. Most recently, he is the executive director of our cardiovascular center here at St. Joe's in Bellingham, and has been for many years, I think since 2003. As our executive director, Jerry has direct oversight and responsibility over all of our daily operations of the cardiovascular center and the staffing. That includes everything from open heart surgery to cardiac rehab to EKGs, specialist procedure, interventional radiology. Jerry oversees it all. He has 38 staff members and collaborates with his physician partners to really ensure that we deliver top-notch cardiovascular care here in Bellingham and Whatcom County. Jerry, though, most importantly, has a wonderful, wonderful wife and is married and is the father of 2 children. So without much more, I'm going to turn it over to you, Jerry, to set the stage for our conversation today. And Jerry, if you're talking, you're on mute. I haven't got to say that today yet, so that will be the first time.
It would not be a normal day if we didn't have to say that, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And so I'm going to go off video so you can make sure you can see Jerry, but I'll be back. Thanks, guys.
Okay, we can move to the next slide. Are we able to move to the next slide? There we go. So the Cardiovascular Center here at St. Joe's, it actually opened in October of 2003. So it was a vision that was developed by one of those physicians is on this call now, Dr. Trenuth, and Dr. McAfee, along with the former CEO here, Nancy Bidding. And it was a vision to build a cardiovascular program here in Bellingham, which would allow our patients to stay in the community. And over the years, this program has continued to grow and expand. But the initial vision would be that the physicians at the time were private practice. They would do their job to recruit physicians, and the hospital would do its job to provide the technology and the brick and mortar. And that's been an agreement that took place years ago. And now that all the physicians are employed, it's just a vision that continues to grow. You can see by this slide that we have 38 providers in the here in Bellingham that provide cardiovascular care. When I came in 2000, I started here in 2001. We opened the center in 2003. There were at the time, there were 7 cardiologists, and today, fast forward to today, we have 16 cardiologists. We had 1 clinic back then. We now have 6 clinics, but you can see a full array of all of our physicians here. The physicians that are in italics in some of these are just repeated on the slide. But for general, we offer general cardiology. We have an expert here in heart failure with a nurse practitioner that supports him, Dr. Liu. We've supported adult congenital heart disease in this community for many, many years. We've had our own physicians in the past, but more recently, with one of our physicians having left, we now can have a partnership with the University of Washington. We have electrophysiology, which is our electrical side of what we do. That was a program that started here in 2003. Prior to that, we didn't have electrophysiology in the community. Interventional cardiology, a lot of specialists in that area. Structural heart, which is one of the newer fields that we have in cardiovascular, which is doing all of the structural things from putting in percutaneous valves to clipping the mitral valve. And we have more recently advanced cardiac imaging. We have a whole host of physicians that do that. And we're now doing, and you'll see, and Dr. Tandon will allude to this, a lot of advanced imaging with MRI, which is kind of the big forefront of what we're doing with imaging. We had cardiac surgery here since 1994. Dr. Jim Douglas kind of started the program. Jim is still with us. And we've now Dr. Maziers and Dr. Jackson's our newest physician. And then vascular surgery, 3 fantastic vascular surgeons with Dr. Sohn, Dr. Zastro, and Dr. Ganut and their team of PAs. So 38 providers strong, covering the full gamut of cardiovascular care right here in Bellingham. If we move to the next slide, and just to kind of, it's always nice that it's one thing to see names on a screen. It's nice to put some faces with the names. You'll see that our newest surgeon, Dr. Nicole Jackson, just joined us in January. She came from Olympia, where she has been in practice there for several years. She's full cardiothoracic surgeon, specializes in thoracic surgery and robotics. So really nice to be able to offer robotic thoracic surgery, which is something we didn't have till she just joined us. Dr. Maziers does it as well. But you can see Dr. Barakat, Dr. Tandon, you'll get a chance to see this afternoon as he gives his talk. But this is some of our newest faces across the CV service line. Very, very fortunate to get Dr. Holmes and Dr. Tandon came right out of fellowship and came here to practice, and we're great to have that expertise here in our community. Kind of move to the next slide. I always like to kind of lay it out this way when we talk about the cardiovascular services that we offer here. We have our clinics, which is our cardiology clinic. We've got 5 satellite clinics, including one in Southeast Alaska in Ketchikan. We have our surgery clinic, both vascular and CT surgery. We have all the advanced imaging. So if you need a nuclear study or an MRI or a CT, all of that's provided right here in the community. And just a matter of perspective, for cardiac MR, we probably do more cardiac MR here in Bellingham than they do in the rest of the state. And we're the second program in the state to offer cardiac stress MR. Dr. Tandon will go over that with us. So really keeping at the forefront of these new technologies and advancements. Of course, we have our CT and vascular surgery. We do both vascular surgery open, and we do it with endovascular stents and guide wires and balloons. Then we kind of get over to we kind of put it in the 3 fields here. We've got the plumbing side, which is the coronary arteries and the arteries and veins that we treat with all of our invasive testing and diagnostics. We have the electrophysiology, or the electricians, which is Dr. McGregor and Dr. Barakat. They provide all the electrical testing from the diagnostic EP studies to ablations for AFib and SVT, various other conditions. We put in all the pacemakers and defibrillators here. And more recently, there's a leadless pacemaker. It's a kind of a limited window of people who meet that criteria, but we now have pacemakers that are leadless, and we implant those here. And the newest field here is structural heart, which is the TAVR. We're introducing there's been TAVR, which we've used all along. TAVI is another acronym they use for this program. But so you might hear TAVR or TAVI, which is putting in the aortic valves. In fact, we're doing 2 patients today getting new valves via TAVR. The Watchman is for patients with AFib, closing that atrial appendage. And then we've been doing PFO and ASD closures for many years here. The one structural piece we're not doing currently is MitraClip. And it's a way to clip the mitral valve, and Dr. Tanning can explain it better than I can. That is a field we've been looking at getting into. It's a matter of having enough patient volume to really be good at it. So we're just kind of waiting for our case numbers to build, and we do hope to offer MitraClip maybe even later this year. So it's been a program we've been wanting to launch, but really wanted to make sure we had enough volume that we could support that. So moving to our next slide. So we've got the whole gamut of care. We've got a nice, robust group of physicians and specialists across the cardiovascular environment. But all the specialization, we've been really blessed here in this community over the years to get top-notch physicians who want to make Bellingham their home, want to practice here. So we've been very, very blessed that way. But we offer all the specialization in CV. We've got, of course, the rhythm management with his EP. We got the structural heart failure, our cardiac rehab, which is going to be relocating to a new location and being slightly bigger, which will be really helpful. We've got all the valvular heart disease and all the treatments related to that. The adult congenital that we've been doing here for many years and continue to do with the partnership with the UW. We've been doing pediatric echocardiograms here since 2002, and we are partnered with Children's Hospital. They interpret all the studies for us. We provide those, kids can get those echocardiograms here in the community without having to drive all the way to Seattle to get it. And now all the advanced imaging. We might have a little glitch here. Okay. Well, let us go to the next slide.
Jerry, right now I'm seeing the slide that says a top rated and recognized program. Do you want to speak to that one?
Yeah,
perfect.
That just came up, so great. So one of the neat things about our program here in Bellingham, it's had a lot of local recognition, statewide recognition, and even national recognition. So we've just recently, we really felt with having a structural heart program and offering TAVR and TAVI here, we wanted to be a certified program. And you've got to go through quite a rigorous process to be certified through the American College of Cardiology. And we were really adamant that we were going to get that certification. So we started out about a year ago to get that. And within the last 6 weeks, we were notified that we did get that certification. We're the first one in Washington State to obtain it for a TAVR program. And there's under 30 across the US that actually have this certification. So we were felt really good about our ability to qualify and to meet all the quality standards to have that certification here. So really quite a big achievement for our structural heart team. We were just recently noted to be a 3-star surgery program. They rated through the Society of Thoracic Surgery, 3-star being the best for CABG. It's the highest rating you can get. We were the only one in the northern part of the state, north of Seattle. Even in Seattle, the UW doesn't have a 3-star. They're a 2-star. Prov is a 2-star, but we're a 3-star. So really, really excited that we have that recognition here. We have really high quality outcomes. We participate in all the national registries and databases, and we're at the higher tier of those outcomes. Our program is pretty well, highly regarded across the nation. We get asked routinely by industry if we'll be featured speakers or be on advisory panels for new technology they're developing. I get asked to do some of that. Some of our physicians get asked to do it. So we're going to be giving a talk at a national meeting for Medtronic on AFib and how we do AFib ablations here. We've been doing research for years and just really kind of got that program up and getting. We've been running it for many years, but we weren't doing a lot of studies, but now the studies are starting to grow. And we do those studies across the PeaceHealth system. So we partner with our sister hospitals and we all participate in like studies. And then of course, we're the hub program here for the Northwest. We have patients coming to us from the islands, Skagit, Southeast Alaska. Ketchikan refers all their patients here for cardiac care, even if it's emergent. And then more recently, the University of Washington stopped doing lead extractions and they chose us to be the site that they would send their patients. So we've been doing all the lead extractions. These are pacemaker leads for patients that come from Overlake Hospital, Evergreen, the UW, Swedish, we're referring them here. So we're, it's a high recognition for our two electrophysiologists and their skill set in doing those procedures. So moving to our next slide. So highly recognized program, fully comprehensive, lots of great, we have all the specialties covered here. And with that, we're always growing and expanding. And since I've been here, I don't think we've rested once when we come to what we're growing and building and always having to expand to meet the needs of our community with our ultimate goal of always keeping patients in the community. We're going to be building 2 new operating rooms here at St. Joe's. That project will break ground right now, tentatively set for July, and then opening at the end of this year. One of those is basically taking a full cath lab imaging system and putting it in the middle of an operating room. They call that a hybrid OR. So we're going to be adding a 10th operating room, plus the 9th will be the hybrid room. So we can do a lot of this advanced procedures that need really high-end imaging will be done in the operating room. So that's a big project that's going to be breaking ground this summer. Our outpatient imaging, we do have outpatient cardiovascular imaging in the Marble Building, and we're going to be moving to the Marble Building. Currently, we're in the Northwest Medical Center building, otherwise known as the Fountain Building, on the 3rd floor. We just have 6 rooms. We're going to be expanding to 12 rooms, plus being able to move some of our procedural stuff over there. So by late July, we'll be operating in the Marble Building for our outpatient imaging. So that's a big expansion, 10,000 square foot center, which will offer all the echo, vascular, nuke med, and procedural area. And we need to expand our cardiology clinic. It's amazing to think I came here where there was about 5 to 7 cardiologists, and now we have 16. We have 22 exam rooms. We're going to expand to 32 exam rooms here in Bellingham in the Northwest Medical Center building. So a big expansion to the clinic right after the imaging center opens. And then we're going to be also expanding our clinic in Anacortes. Dr. McAfee has been our core physician out in Anacortes for a number of years, and that clinic just keeps growing and growing. So we're going to be actually relocating from a very small office we're in now to an office that will give us double the amount of exam rooms and allow us to expand that service and offer more echo services there. And then our cardiac rehab, we moved out of our prior space, and we're currently operating out of our cardiovascular center waiting room at the time because of the COVID. We'll be moving them into the bunker building with an expanded footprint, so we can offer a little bit more, slots to get more patients into cardiac rehab, because that program is too getting lots and lots of new referrals. So really a full comprehensive program, growing and expanding and offering all the comprehensive services right here in the community. We move to the next slide. And it's the last slide that I have, just to kind of show you, this is what a hybrid operating room looks like on the right. It's a big imaging system in the middle of an operating room. And then the schematic on the left is our new imaging center with multiple echo rooms, vascular ultrasound. These pink cameras are the big nuke med cameras. We're moving 1 new camera over and adding a 2nd camera, full size camera, and ability to do outpatient procedures and trying to keep our patients outside the 4 walls of the hospital and into more of a dedicated imaging center. So in this project, the imaging project starts in April and will wrap up in July. So lots of projects going on this year, expanding the CV service line. So
Wow,
thank you.
Jerry, that was outstanding. I feel so proud to be here and part of the work that you're doing. I don't know, Jerry, if you were able to see, but there's 3 people on the call that I feel like we need to shout out and say
Okay.
thank you to, and that's Dr. Trenuth, Nancy Bidding is also on the phone, and Dr. McAfee, and 3 of them, along with your leadership, have truly laid the foundation for this amazing work and brought us to where we are today.
I have to say that it was Nancy Bidding and Don McAfee and Dr. Trenuth that actually had the vision for the Cardiovascular Center. And they're the ones that mapped it out on a napkin. Too bad they never saved the napkin.
Right?
But
We need that napkin.
it was their vision and their leadership that opened this center, and as this center continues to prosper because they had the vision for this community. So
Absolutely.
very thankful for what they've done for this community.
Very thankful.
This
Thank you,
Don,
you
th-
3.
this Don McAfee. Can I say something?
Of course, Dr. McAfee.
I think it is super important with the people that you named to really call out Nancy Bidding in terms of her role in developing the Cardiovascular Center. She was the CEO at the time for St. Joe's Hospital. And it was a big, big undertaking. The Cardiovascular Center really was nothing more than a dream and a vision and where to go. And PeaceHealth and Nancy Bidding took a big risk. It was a big capital risk, number one. It was a significant risk for Nancy Bidding in terms of her professional career that this thing succeeded. So it was a true partnership between PeaceHealth and us in developing this. It was an incredible story. It really was.
Oh, thank you, Dr. McAfee, for sharing that. Truly, thank you.
And this is Nancy. Can I make a comment?
Hi, Nancy. Of course. Welcome.
Okay, Jerry and the others that have been named, it would never have happened without it. And I'm calling from California. I hope you guys aren't still shoveling. Um, but we come up to Coopville on Whidbey Island very frequently, well, regularly. And I'm really glad to hear this service is all and more that we dreamed of.
Oh,
And
absolutely,
it
Nancy.
really was a dream. So thank
Thank
you.
you so
Thank you.
much. Thank you for your leadership,
And I
truly.
wish we'd saved the napkin too.
Maybe we'll recreate it one day. Recreate it one day. All right, you guys,
And
let's.
could
Oh,
I make another call out, please?
sure, of
And my
course.
call out is for the foundation. The foundation, in addition to what we initiated, the vision, strategy, the mix, bricks and mortars, the foundation has been absolutely critical in our ongoing success. So I want to thank, number one, the foundation. Number two, thank all the foundation members who have contributed to this effort. So thank you all.
Oh, thank you. It's our honor to serve. It truly is. We have a great product, right? It's easy. It's easy work. All right. I want to go to the next slide and introduce you to Dr. Tandon. Really excited that Dr. Tandon has joined our Peace Health family. He started his work in medicine at the University of Washington, where he received his doctorate, then moved on to a master's in public health, then decided the University of Michigan for his internal medicine residency, and then came back to the University of Washington, go Huskies, for his cardiology fellowship. So we're really excited that Dr. Tandon is here. Dr. Tandon has really some special and unique medical interests, specifically in hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, say that 5 times, genetic and rare heart diseases, sports cardiology, complex valve disease, and multimodality cardiac imaging. And his research has really been focused on new drugs for rare heart conditions with atrial fibrillation and stroke and advanced technology and cardiac imaging. When he's not doing all of that, he actually serves too as a member for My Heart, Your Heart, a nonprofit organization developing the infrastructure needed to safely implant reuse cardiac devices in the developing world. And then in some more spare time, I don't know where he's finding that, he founded a nonprofit organization that's really dedicated to providing healthcare to orphans in Zambia, while he's also spending time with his wife and his kids, traveling, windsurfing, wake surfing, and hiking through the Pacific Northwest. So I'm guessing he might not sleep, but maybe we hope he does get some sleep. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Dr. Tandon. So glad you're here, and you've got the mic.
Thank you, Anne, and Nancy, Don, um, Dr. Trenuth. What a privilege it is to be part of your legacy here at St. Joe's. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. And to all of you in the foundation, I think that your work has been instrumental in allowing us to deliver the kind of outstanding cardiovascular care we're able to deliver every day. And that's really the reason I came here. So it's just a privilege to be able to speak to all of you. Having trained at a few big research ivory tower-ish hospitals at the UW and Michigan and Johns Hopkins, I was looking for a practice where I could see a great breadth of cardiology, lots of fascinating, interesting, rare cases that make it exciting, but also a practice where we had great depth, where we could take care of those patients in-house and not send them back to the university setting. And this group is really one of the few places in the state and even in the broader region that can see both the great breadth and the great depth of cardiology. You can go to the next slide. It brings up this idea of 95% at 110%, which is really our goal. We want to be able to do 95, maybe 98% of cardiology, probably everything short of heart transplant at our center. But we're able to deliver it at 110%, a more personal level of care, close to people's homes, better accountability, better relationships with the docs down the hall, and with the patients themselves than is able to be delivered at a big quaternary care center. And some of that is done through all the new technologies and new procedures that we're able to do. Jerry touched on a number of these things. Of course, transcatheter aortic valve replacement has changed the world of aortic valve surgery in the last 10 years. And it's really, really good to be able to tell my patients, you don't need to leave town to get a TAVR done, and to say that with great integrity. We're adding mitral clip. I think we are only needing to recruit 1 or 2 more folks at this point for the procedure, and so that should be up and running later this year. The transcarotid arterial revascularization is a really good, minimally invasive way to open up the carotid arteries in the neck without surgery. Leadless pacemakers and subcutaneous defibrillators are electrophysiology devices to keep the heart going or to restart the heart that don't require wires inside the veins and inside the heart itself, which can be prone to dislodging or getting infected down the road, and so are really, really good for those patients who can qualify for them, and especially for younger patients who cannot, you shouldn't have to live for many decades with an intravenous system. 3D ablation mapping has really changed the way we deliver ablation, along with some of the lead extraction techniques that Dr. Barakat has brought, has now kind of made us the quaternary care center for a lot of the electrophysiology procedures, which is super, super exciting. And tying that in with MRI has really changed the way that we do electrophysiology with advanced mapping techniques that we can do both before the procedure with MRI and during the procedure with these mapping systems. Other cool imaging things, I put cardiac stress MRI in here. Stress MRI is the best possible type of stress test that anybody can have. It is it's really a game changer. We didn't do it at UW, and so we were so privileged to have Dr. Steele come out here, who's really amazing, and one of the guys who created cardiac stress MRI early in his career. He was a fellow in Boston where some of the initial studies were done, and brought that technology to us, and has really changed the way I practice. Has changed the way I think everybody in our group practices, and now is also getting referrals from around the state for stress MRI here. So really, really cool thing to be a part of. Alongside MRI, 3D TE has really changed the way we examine valves and do valve diagnosis, and has opened the door to things like MitraClip, which require real-time 3D visualization of the valves. And this is a lot of gadgetry, and I know that it's easy to throw gadgetry on a slide. But I think what's important about gadgetry is that it makes our patients' lives better. We wouldn't bring a new technology here, invest in a new technology, if it wasn't for the patients. And so when you invest in a new technology, it is for the patient care. And secondarily, it's for recruiting. I mean, like I said, people like myself or Dr. Bearcat, Dr. E, who came, you want to go places where we can do the newest and the coolest, most fun stuff and take care of our patients at a level that is equivalent to or often exceeds the places where we trained. So I want to tell you a story of a patient of mine that I think is a good example of the use of this kind of technology. Go to the next slide, John. So this is a pulmonary artery catheter. It's a catheter that's used to make pressure and flow measurements in the heart every single day in every single cath lab around the entire world. And a patient of mine was one of the engineers on the team that developed this pulmonary artery catheter many, many years ago. The gentleman is in his late 80s now and came to my clinic complaining of shortness of breath and chest pain. Clearly a very well-educated guy who knows a lot about the heart, and doesn't hold back any punches with regard to the kind of care he wants to receive. So go on to the next slide, Joanna. Pictures are a little jumpy here, but we started off as any good cardiologist would with an echocardiogram, which is an ultrasound of the heart. And here, I guess I can't show you a pointer since Joanna's running the presentation, but what you see here is the left ventricle, the main pumping chamber of the heart, beating away. And what you see kind of towards the right side of the image is a lot of white. And all that white is calcification and crustiness and blockage on the aortic valve. The aortic valve separates our heart from the rest of our body, and if it gets covered in calcium and cholesterol, it stops opening so well. It's kind of like a finger on top of a garden hose. The pressure has to increase and increase and increase in order to get blood to move past it. And so our gentleman needed a replacement of his aortic valve. Go on to the next slide, Joanna. This video shows what a TAVR procedure is like. Up through the aorta from the groin comes the valve that is nicely folded down on a sheath. And then we cross the aortic valve and inflate the new valve in the position there, pushing the old crusty valve right out of the way, and then retracting all the equipment that we brought up from the groin to place the new valve. And then you'll see a really nice new valve in place that will last many, many years, taking the job of the old valve. And now in the past, this required open heart surgery. This was something that you go into the hospital, you spend 5 days in the ICU, you spend a few weeks in rehab. If you're lucky, you're back on your feet at a month, and it takes 3, if not more, months to fully recover. And some people, especially people in their 80s and 90s, never do make a full recovery, much like our elderly patient in question. Go on to the next slide, Joanna. So 10 years ago, it was kind of get open heart surgery or die. And that has really changed with TAVR. Now, usually with TAVR, we use a CT scan with 3D reconstruction of the vasculature and of the heart and of the valve to plan the placement of the valve. We're able to measure all the blood vessels to make sure the valve can be accommodated, measure the aorta, measure the valve, pick the right size of valve, and make a plan for the procedure in advance that way. But our gentleman in question has also developed end-stage kidney disease. And when you have end-stage kidney disease, you cannot have CT scans with contrast because the contrast can be toxic to the kidneys and would undoubtedly push him into a dialysis situation, which is something he really, really wanted to avoid. And so I was kind of scratching my head a little bit. What should we do with this gentleman? I texted some of my colleagues, professors down at the university, and said, hey, are you guys doing any TAVR without any contrast administration? And they said, no, we're not really doing that. I went into the scientific literature to find, how are people doing this? And there's really only 2 case reports out there of people doing TAVR without contrast administration. And so, I walked down the hall to Dr. King's office and said, "Hey, should we do a TAVR without contrast administration? Want to figure this out with me and get it done?" And he was game. And so we put together a plan to do it. Go ahead to the next slide, Joanna. So that brought our patient into our MRI scanner. This is a really, really good, nice Siemens magnet, probably the best MRI you can get in the world at this point. And go over to the next slide. And so we started to get pretty pictures. So here you can see the heart pumping away. The valve in question is that one sort of at the top of the pumping chamber where you can see that jet of flow going past it. Just like I said, finger over the garden hose, you get a jet of blood going through that valve when it's all crusty and locked down. And then using some really, go ahead to the next slide, China. Using some really sort of cutting edge MRI techniques, we were able to map out, without the use of any contrast, the entire path for that valve from the groin up to the heart. Measure the valve, do everything you can do in a CT scanner with contrast on an MRI magnet without any contrast. And I can't emphasize enough how unique of an opportunity to do this was. Where I trained at the university, which I'm a huge, huge fan of. I'm wearing my Husky shirt right now. The TAVR docs and the CT or the MRI docs are in different departments. They don't talk to each other. It would be difficult to coordinate something like this that we were able to coordinate in the span of a 15-minute conversation. And doing cardiac MRI myself, I just went over to the scanner and ran the magnet and got the exact pictures we needed to do the procedure, which is just super exciting to be able to do a procedure that's really something we could write up, put in the literature, with such ease for somebody in the community who had already given so much to us as cardiologists around the world. Go ahead to the next slide, Joanna. In addition to using MRI, we use 3D TEE. Here you can see the Siemens platform, and I think the foundation was really instrumental in updating our echo and our 3D TEE capabilities specifically. So thank you so much for that. I'm sort of a diehard echocardiographer, and so the equipment that was here when I was looking for places to work was really one of the reasons I came, because echo is really the bedrock of all cardiology. So go to the next slide, Joanna. Here's some of those 3D TE images that we took in this very case. And we were able to then create this in the bottom left corner, green 3D reconstruction of the valve to correlate with our MRI measurements to make sure that we had the right measurements and the right valve planned across 2 modalities, both the MRI and with transesophageal echocardiography, in lieu of those of the CT that would have required contrast. Then go ahead on to the next slide, Joanna. And this culminated in this image here. This is the valve being deployed in my patient's heart. So there you can see it, and it gets expanded with a balloon, pushes the old valve out of the way, and there's the new valve. And a complete TAVR procedure done, which would have been unheard of 10 years ago, and done completely without contrast here because of kind of the advanced imaging capabilities we have. Super exciting to see it, and it's definitely a case I'm really proud of, and I think everybody should be. Go on to the next slide, Joanna. So all this is to say thank you so much. Thank you for allowing us to do these kind of things. Thank you for building a infrastructure that attracts people, cardiologists and nurse practitioners and PAs who want to be at the cutting edge. As one of the newer docs starting in 2019, I'm so excited to continue to work with all of you for many years to come and build this CVC Center into the best it can be, and hopefully the best in the state.
Thank you, Dr. Tandon. That was just phenomenal. Really, really interesting and exciting work. So thank you so, so much. I think, though, I like best in the world. We'll go with best in the world. I think that is absolutely perfect. And that truly is what we're working and striving for as a foundation, and the supporting the work of our cardiologists and cardiovascular program here in Bellingham. So if we go to the next slide, the foundation really is focused on supporting the needs of the center, really in four major areas. And the first of those is patient and family emergency support. There are oftentimes items like housing, transportation, certain medical equipment, and medication that insurance just doesn't cover, but is so important to make sure that we have positive outcomes for our patients. So the foundation is willing and able to support those patient needs. The next area, which I'm personally passionate about, is our cardiac rehab program. Each year we see approximately 450 new patients who participate in cardiac rehab. And while insurance covers some of those costs, for about 50 of those community members, insurance just isn't able to step in, or it steps in on a limited basis. And so making sure that after they have had one of these amazing procedures that Dr. Tandon talked about, is that they get the work afterwards in terms of cardiac rehab. And then we have equipment, and I might use the word gadgetry after Dr. Tandon's presentation. Truly, this is one of the areas that the foundation has been focused on, just because of how rapidly changing technology is. Just in the last couple of years, we had a cardiovascular imaging campaign where we raised over $1 million to really provide the newest imaging equipment that did really one important thing, and I think all of us will want that. It significantly increased image clarity for more of a precise diagnostic and procedures. So it all started with a picture, and we want the best possible picture available for our cardiologists before they begin exploring possible procedures. We also were able to help fund a new electrophysiology lab. And what I love about this is it reduced caregiver and physician, and of course our patient radiation by about 40%, which is really important when we think about the safety of all of those involved in a procedure. And then with your wonderful support, you've definitely helped us boost all of our program. You've seen a lot of the equipment that the foundation has helped to provide. So we also have the area of greatest need, which is really that area when we have a physician or Jerry who comes to us with a new idea and a new need, we're able to fund that. So thank you. I think now we're going to turn it over to some time to talk for questions. And thank you to those of us who submitted your questions. If you have any questions, you can also put it in the chat. And as that's happening, I do want to give a special call out. While we need amazing gadgetry, we also need our Mended Hearts program. And I know Dave Huber is on the call today, and he's the president of our Mended Hearts program, who really their job as a group of committed volunteers is to wrap their arms around those who have been diagnosed with cardiovascular disease and help walk that journey together, so that they know that they have someone by their side who's experienced what they've experienced and can help them on that journey. So I've got a couple of questions that have come in, and I'm also watching the chat function, so please feel free to use that. You know, one question that often comes up, and we've touched on it a little bit today, is are there any cardiovascular procedures or services that we're not able to do in Whatcom County? What would those be? And even follow up to that, are there plans to meet those needs? So Dr. Tandon, I'll turn that over to you.
Yeah, of course. The primary, we used to have a mechanical support program with LVAD implantation when Christy Smith was here. And so that mechanical ventricular support for end-stage heart failure and heart transplant are really the primary things that we don't do here. And I think the reason for that is the volume. right? You have to have enough patients to be able to do something frequently enough to be really good at it. And so in Washington, the University of Washington is actually, I think last year was the second or third biggest transplant center in the country. And they do an amazing job of heart transplant, and I think should keep doing it. And so that is probably the main thing that we don't do here that is done elsewhere. Jerry can speak to if there's plans to do it, but I think the main limitation there is the patient population.
Sounds good. Thank you, Dr. Tandon. And there's a question in the chat function. I'm going to give you a moment to come up with an answer for that one. But in the meantime, Jerry, a question for you. How has COVID-19 affected our services and cardiovascular specifically over the last year?
So the biggest effect was that during the height of COVID, the March, April, May timeframe, we stopped doing certain elective procedures, like we weren't doing AFib ablation. We continued to do TAVR because those patients were very sick. And we stopped doing some vascular, more elective type things that where patients could wait a little longer. What it told us, though, is when we got into May, when we were able to open things up, we had about 125 patients that were affected, that were postponed for procedures. We got very aggressive, and all 125 of those patients were cared for by the end of the year. We just got them in and made space, and our docs stretched their schedules to make it work. So that was the big impact, is it delayed patients from getting procedures. And we also saw patients who, because of the fear of coming to a hospital because of COVID, came to us a little, pretty sick. We saw some really sick people that came to us that were, because of that fear factor, to not go to a hospital because of of COVID. So we rallied really quickly and got them all caught up.
Good. That's great to hear. Dr. Tandon, were you able to see the question in chat that Dr. Amber Rowe asked?
Yes, indeed. The question is, what's some significant research being done that is translated to clinical use rather than some basic research? And the answer to that question is, there's really research being done across the disciplines. The stuff that comes to mind as far as really clinical research is surrounding the new cardiac devices and implants that we're doing. So Watchman, which is the left atrial appendage closure device for patients with atrial fibrillation who cannot tolerate anticoagulation. A brand new Watchman device was just released, and so we're one of the first centers in the country to be implanting the new device and then monitoring and registering all those patients in whom the new device goes in to ensure that our results are the same as the results that happened in the original trials to support the use of that device. With stress MRI, we're looking at getting involved in a couple of stress MRI trials, specifically looking at a really difficult to diagnose condition called microvascular disease, where you actually get blockages in the microscopic vessels rather than in the larger blood vessels. So that's one clinical research thing in stress MRI we've been looking at a little bit. And then back as far as pharmaceuticals go, there's a new, some of my research as a fellow was related to a new drug for hypertrophic cardiomyopathy called mavacamten, which just went through phase 3 trials. And so I don't know if I've talked to you about this yet, Jerry, but hoping to be one of the registry sites for enrolling patients or for getting patients on that new medication. So those 3 examples. There's more, but I think those are 3 good ones.
That's great, Dr. Tandon. And that leads me perfectly into a question for Jerry. Jerry, what's on your list? What are we bringing next to St. Joe's, or what do you have your eye on to make sure that we continue to be the best?
Well, right now, the big thing is the MitraClip procedure. We really want to bring that to the community so our patients don't have to go down to Seattle. So that's the big one we're focusing on, and making sure we got enough volume to be really good at it. So that's the big one. And our big focus now is just our imaging center across the street, because we get really frustrated with ourselves, and I know our patients get really frustrated when they can't get in timely to see physicians or to get procedures. So that's a big focus for us, is to get that center open so that we can get our patients in much more efficiently and instead of having them wait.
It's great, Jerry. Really great. All right. Well, our time together has come to an end. It went so quickly. So if we go to the next slide, I have 3 requests of you for all who presented. One, first off, just thank you. Thank you for being here. Thanks for the rich dialogue. It was wonderful to get to share with you the work of our Cardiovascular Center. My hope is that you take this information and share what you've learned with the rest of our community members. We'll also be sending out a recording, so you can share that as well. Join us for our next Insiders, which will be on March 16th, where we'll focus on our Childbirth Center and some really exciting work that's being done to make sure that we keep our newest of our community members at home with their families when they arrive in our community. And then finally, send us your feedback. We're always working hard to improve these events, and we do want to hear from you on how we can make those improvements. So thank you again for everyone who joined us today. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day, and we'll see you in March for our next event. And if you any additional information, please feel free to reach out to myself or to Jennifer. We're here to answer all your questions. All right, you guys, thank you. Have a great day.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.